What's up, everybody? I did a video last week on about how I've been tracking a possible polar vortex collapse since about Christmas. And there's one part of this that I didn't really have time to get into, but my local weather just I can't do everywhere all at once. But the old forecast was for Monday the 15th, low of 18, high of 33 degrees. And now it's a low of -5, high of 12. So that's a 20-degree drop that they weren't expecting at the time. Not only is it going to be frigid temperatures, but 20 to 30 mile an hour winds with up to 40 mile an hour gusts. And look at that, from Friday night, temperatures are just jumping off a cliff, going from 44 down to 14, just like it did last time. Then we might be getting 3 to 5 inches of snow, again, high winds. And then it's not going to get above freezing for 8 to 10 days. So y'all might have to suffer through me being stuck at home for a week with nothing to do but make videos. Now, this is the second winter in a year that we've had a polar vortex collapse, and up until a few years ago, I never even heard of these. Here you can see that big, huge Arctic air push coming down into the central U.S., and we've got -28 around Nebraska, Wyoming, -45 up in Canada. And this thing is just bullying its way in, so everybody's going to have these high winds. These are seriously lethal temperatures, so I just hope you guys are prepared for what's coming. I know you're all adults, but seriously, it did catch me off guard last year. I mean, my plumbing froze. I wasn't ready for that. Ruckus was just a pup at the time, and I had the wall heater going and my electric heater going both. And I still had to keep him in front of the electric heater blowing on him because it was cold in here. So knowing those kind of winds are coming and the temperatures, I went ahead and plastic off. I've got an old window that needs replaced in my room, and I'm just going to disconnect the bathroom that I don't use and put a heater in the basement so my water lines don't freeze. But if the electricity goes out, I'm still going to be kind of struggling to get through, honestly. And with 40 mile an hour wind gusts, that's real easy to blow down and take out some power lines. But not just that. I've told you guys many times, if I were going to do a hack attack or something against the energy supplies, I would do it right before a big, huge cold front came in that was going to last for a couple of weeks. So just be aware of all that. Anyway, this is the really strange part of this that I wanted to talk about. This comes from the channel BP Earthwatch. You guys can check him out. He was the first person I heard talking about it, but there's been a few people address this. But he was tracking this object on the radar up at 84,000 feet. It was there 10 days ago, and then it was still there 5 days ago. Now, this is up in the jet stream, in the stratosphere. This is way higher than most planes fly. I guess some spy planes can go up this high. But there's not a lot other than balloons and spy planes that can operate up at that altitude. My take on things is when this came cruising over, there wasn't anything we could do about it. I looked into the operational range of Sidewinder missiles, and I think it only went up to about 65,000 feet. And what I honestly think happened is the end result of that is they put a duplicate up right off the coast for everybody to see at a lower altitude and then shot it down. But I did a video a couple months ago about the DoD saying that the future of tactics is in the 60 to 100,000 foot range because there's not much that operates up there. But now, check this thing out. I mean, this looks like a bow shock from the magnetosphere, but this is a stationary object
elevated jet stream that's
up
being
above
pushed up above
the Arctic, and you can see that
us and most of
it's
Canada.
not just a glitch. It's
Look at
literally
this trail it's leaving.
causing all the stratospheric winds to
And we are now
curve
at
around
57,000 feet
and
as
then
far as what we're
we'll
looking at
zoom
the
out
model.
here
And we pull it
some,
back, and you
and
can see
you
that
can
the jet
see
stream
that
is
it's
actually
right smack dab
still
in the
bent.
middle of
And it's
our jet
got
stream.
a lot to do with, I
And
think,
interfering with the winds
solar
that
wind.
make up our polar vortex. On the left, you can see a normal jet stream formation. It's not quite that circular, but then when that gets interrupted, then it causes the polar vortex to split into two, and the Arctic air shoves way down south. Well, this is exactly what has happened and why we're going to see negative 30-degree temperatures. So my question here is, are we looking at some new toy in the weather mod field? Now, I've thought about this for a couple weeks, and honestly, the best explanation for this. I don't think that we've got a piece of equipment that can sit stationary at that kind of altitude. So my guess would be that this is just going old school with technology and it's literally anchored to the ground. But it's really curious that that was there for 4 or 5 days just before a polar vortex collapse. Don't you think? Because after that being up there for a few days, then this is what our polar region looks like. Two different vortices, and now we got some crazy weather coming. Anyway, it just made me really curious. There's been talk for 15 years now about HARP and other things, but this is more concrete evidence than I've ever seen out of any program like that. And who knows, it could be something like that. I mean, can they generate force fields? A lot of people give them way more credit for what technology they have than I do. I don't think they have half the stuff that people claim they have. And I think they love it when everybody acts like they're just light years ahead of everybody else. Just like they'll promote any pirate theory that points at some outrageous, nefarious character behind the scenes and doesn't talk about the rich, powerful organizations that we have everywhere. That's how this game is played nowadays, is they just promote the people that are so far off base that it doesn't matter. Because it's very successful. The people that are putting out this information really believe it, and then a lot of other people say, well, this guy's just like me, and he's not controlled by the system, and blah, blah, blah. Well, you don't have to be controlled by the system to be just so wrong that you're putting out completely irrelevant information. Anyway, I was hesitant to even put this out at first because, we've got a lot of people out there that every little thing is a piracy. And it's doing more harm than good, honestly. I learned a long time ago that I am not about just, throwing out the clickbait stuff that's popular at the moment just because it gets a lot of clicks. Because that mentality is doing more damage than these guys could have ever dreamed up. They're not that creative. But unfortunately, there are a lot of scientists out there that keep falling for the age-old grift of, well, okay, there's this one possibility in a perfect world where this will really help somebody, but the other 99 uses of it are going to enslave mankind. So, yeah, I'll help create this absolute surveillance state where everybody's tracked by drones to make sure they don't step out of line. Oh, the other thing I wanted to say here, for those of you that made it through my coffee ramblings, it's early, I'm getting juiced up for work. There was the woolly mammoth found, I believe, this one was in Siberia, I believe, and they say it had fallen off a cliff because its leg was broken, but it was caught up in a straight up mud flood with very little sign of decomposition. It even had buttercups in its stomach, flowers in its stomach that don't grow in northern Siberia anymore. But this means it was frozen faster than it could decompose. And then I did a video a while back on the thousands of mammoths that are all washed up in this mud bank here. This is where, after a huge mud flood, which is just probably a giant tsunami in this case that swept all across the land, and then it picks up all the dirt and debris and the animals and everything, and then this was the low-lying area that it all settled down into. But all of this stuff was just flash frozen in a very short amount of time, which would take unbelievably cold temperatures. I mean, a woolly mammoth is pretty thick, and then mud is actually a bit of an insulator. It's not going to change temperatures near as fast as the air. But the moral of the story here is the temperature dropped really fast in that area, seemingly all of the Arctic, and this was at a time when the Arctic wasn't even cold. I guess my number one hypothesis would have to be a geomagnetic reversal, and the Arctic wasn't at the top of the world. I mean, there are tropical forests found all over the north, Norwegian and Arctic. Anyway, this would just be a very extreme case of a polar vortex. I'm not going to go too deep into it right now, but seeing this blast of cold air made me think of all that. Anyway, we got some cold weather coming. It's not life-threatening for the most part, but just handle your business. If the power goes out, it could be a rough situation. But let's hope the worst case scenario is that that snow falls and turns into a solid sheet of ice and I'm stuck at home with Ruckus and you guys making videos for a week. I know, that would suck, but it's better than freezing. Static out.